All right. Welcome, everybody, for another fantastic edition of Proof of Vision. Today, we had a really, really great conversation with Connor, who is the founder of Enso. For those of you that are not aware of Enso, they've recently kind of made some waves with their integration with Boyco and some of the vaults that they built with Barachain. For the Boyco vaults, I guess is they're better known. But Enso's kind of like the underlying infrastructure that all of that is built on, which is really cool to talk about with Connor. Just about how he views Enso's role in the markets. It was also really interesting to hear that they pivoted a few times. One of the main things I think you have to look for, for founders in this space is, just being able to keep on iterating until you win. And I think that's what Enso did. They definitely did not start out doing what they were doing. They kept on, fighting for product market fit until they found it. And I think that's really, really important in terms of, if you're assessing a founder and you're looking for like keys to success there. So anyway, we got into all that in the episode and more. Hope you guys enjoy. Obviously, if you do, please hit the like and subscribe button. And I will see you on the next episode. Cheers. All right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Proof of Vision. Today, we are blessed with the presence of Connor, the CEO of Enso. How are you, sir?
Very good. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Interesting times we're living in, as always. Saw you guys are doing some cool things with Barachain and Royco that I want to get into a little bit later. But definitely congrats on that integration. That's been I think a huge success for everybody involved so far. But why don't we start off with your background a little bit? Let's talk about like how you got into crypto. What's your journey looked like? I know originally, I don't think you guys started out, with Enso with kind of the same vision you have in mind right now. So you guys kind of had to make a pivot at one point in time. So I want to talk about that a little bit. But just give us the origin story of yourself and how Enso came to fruition.
Sure, I am happy to do so. Correction, not one pivot, but two pivots.
So multi-talented.
No, multi years of eating sand. um, so I'm Conor, one of the co-founders of Enso. I've been building full-time on Ethereum since 2016. I've helped build a fully regulated and licensed crypto bank here within Switzerland. I built a cold storage, hot storage, second exchange, multi-sig infrastructure, fully collateralized stablecoin with the Swiss franc stored in the Swiss National Bank. All of this holds over $5 billion in assets as of today. So the code works, which is good to see in production with people's money. How I kind of got into crypto before Ethereum. So I was running large bot farms on RuneScape and World of Warcraft. Back in the day, I was a bit younger then, didn't have the bank accounts, and you would generally sell these accounts on RuneScape for like another account or items or Bitcoin, right? And kind of Bitcoin was ironically the middleman or the bridge between RuneScape and World of Warcraft. So to be able to get from one game to another game, you weren't able to do direct transfers. So you kind of sell the items in the accounts there to then get Bitcoin, then use Bitcoin to then buy WoW accounts and so forth. So that was kind of my first exposure. I got into it. I remember at one stage I was, reading the news daily, and you could read all the articles. There was barely anything back then, and fell off for a couple of years. Then was in university doing my thesis or dissertation. Some people call it college, pretty much the same thing. And I saw a proposal from a professor talking about Bitcoin. Oh, so I'm looking for a student to write about this in like 2016. And I was like, well, that's cool. I've had exposure, been using this before. Approached him, and then we were having conversations, and he was like, have you ever heard about Ethereum? And I was like, what? What's this random thing called Ethereum? And then I started to, do my research topic for my final year project in uni. And I think it was one of the first ever research papers that was ever written on Ethereum back then. Ironically, so I come more from the cybersecurity side, and I found delegate call. Delegate call allows you to write functions in one contract and then basically use those functions fully in another contract state. So you're basically pretending to be someone else inside of another person, right? And I thought, wow, this is really, really dangerous. And I presented this to a room of researchers, students, and professors. like the vulnerabilities of delegate call. And I believe it was a couple of months later, the Parity wallet hack happened, and which was exactly this situation. Wasn't me, don't know if there was somebody in that room that done it, but it was a very interesting story. And then, Enso started about 3.5 years ago. So I was in that merge between, so I went like full cyberpunk, full decentralization into, I want to see what it's like inside a crypto bank. So let's merge the banking industry with blockchain, bridge that gap. And then from that experience, I was like, okay, I'm going to go full on the other spectrum again, because it just takes years to do stuff in that type of environment that we can do within weeks in this industry. And Enso started as a social trading product. So I was yield farming, doing pretty well, all the food coins, the new shit coins, all the farms that were coming out. And people wanted to basically copy trade me. They wanted to give me the money, which they did. And I was basically making some percentages off of this. And I thought there must be a tool for this, like social trading asset management in crypto. And there wasn't really. There was token sets. There was a couple of index products, but it wasn't DeFi. Like you couldn't generate yield, you couldn't lend, you couldn't borrow, you couldn't LP, you couldn't enter into vaults. So it's kind of where Enso started, and we launched a vampire attack against 6 index protocols. That was a very provocative thing to do. As the first thing as a company, you come out and you say, hey, we can build a better product than 6 of you. And we did, actually. And we migrated over $10 million to our contracts of the social trading. Spent about a year building that, too long. The reason why that we spent so long on this was a lot of audits, a lot of overheads for integrating everything manually. Like we wanted to focus on our product, which was social trading, but we were forced to, I'd been writing Solidity for, 4 years ago, 2021, so 5 years. So, 5 years Solidity, not a newbie to this at all, right? Definitely able to write good Solidity code. Even then, though, we spent $500,000 in audits just for between 12 and 15 DeFi integrations. And we're like, so we want to build a product that encompasses all of DeFi for people to monetize their knowledge in one application. And we spent $500,000 before we could even test this product. Not accounting for developer costs, just for audit costs. So we're like, right, this doesn't make sense. We're going to kill the company. We're basically like, the company's going to die just from these audit costs. So then we rebuilt everything from scratch, and we literally threw everything out the window, built all the code, everything, the product from ground up, to build a DeFi super app. So one application, you can access all these different DeFi protocols through one hub. And we launched that with over 50 plus integrations on day one. We had 5-6 different teams reach out to us and say, how the hell did you integrate 50 protocols on day one? And we're like, that's interesting. 5-6 really good teams are asking that? No, we had a problem. Do other people have the problem of integrating everything on chain? And it turns out, yes. So just to summarize up this part, we really pivoted that 2 times because we then just spun up an API and what we built underneath. And then we just started offering our underlying infrastructure for interacting with DeFi as an API as a service. And that, to date, I think this week we'll be reaching $16.1 billion settlement on chain. And then this week alone is $3.1 billion. And we've got over 75 plus projects, large projects, ranging from like 2 million daily active users to people such as Infinex, such as Berachain, such as like large AI tooling as well. So Enso's perfectly positioned as kind of this shortcut to building on chain. But that's a long way of answering your questions.
This episode is brought to you by Pendle. Pendle is a leading protocol in the DeFi yield sector, operating as a permissionless yield trading protocol, facilitating the tokenization and splitting of any yield-bearing assets in DeFi. This allows users to speculate on future yield or earn a fixed rate on their assets. Learn more at pendle.finance.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's good context. So, and this is
probably the least important part of what you said, but I want to clarify this. So I think it just speaks to like the grind set like mindset that you've got to have as a founder. So you were grinding RuneScape assets, right? And then you were selling those to capitalize on World of Warcraft accounts that you then resold. I'm assuming on the market. Is that was that the game there?
The game was honestly just more for my enjoyment. So I would write, like, if people listening, they know like RS Buddy or OS Bot. Those were like the old bots for RuneScape. You could also write your own script. So whenever I was going to high school and whatnot, I'd be writing at home code to basically play my character for me. And by the time I get back, I get all this extra items. But I was running about 50 to 70 different accounts simultaneously. And the game was, okay, I can get this, I can then level up my main characters or get more good items for my main characters, and then also in these other games as well. Yeah.
Interesting, interesting. No, I had to double click on that for a second because I'm a World of Warcraft nerd myself. That's where I got my origin story. So I had to get into that for a minute.
Did you ever use Honor Buddy?
No, no, I didn't. I didn't. Honestly, like back then when I was playing Vanilla WoW, it was really early. I mean, I was too young to be playing World of Warcraft, mind you. Like me and my brother were just nerding out. And so I had no idea that any of this stuff existed. It was later on that I was like, man, there's so many things I should have done back then that I never did. but I digress. I digress. To speak about Enso a little bit. So, and again, too, it's really interesting. You're not the first person I've interviewed that has like kind of conveyed this, but uh, as a founder, as a startup founder, especially, everybody talks a big game about, oh, we need to remain flexible, we need to be nimble, right? But then to have like the balls to really do it, and then to do it twice, I think speaks volumes. Obviously for you and for you guys, but like just that mentality you've got to have in here. You recognize a problem, and then you spin up your business based on that problem. Like that's what it's all about. Instead of like, hey, I had this idea. But maybe it doesn't have like great PMF, but we're going to do it anyway, damn it, just because, I thought of it and it's a great idea, right? So it just kind of speaks to that, right? And I think that's the mentality you got to have.
Yeah, I can add on to this. So, as a founder, one thing so you've got to have a vision of like where you see the ecosystem going. That's for sure, right? But you can't get in your own isolated bubble, and you need to be aware of what's actually happening. During the bear market, we saw so many founders quit. So many people just give back the money, right? They stuck to their guns of what idea they had, but nobody wanted it. And one of the most valuable things I realized was, I'm not building this for myself. I'm building this for other people. And if other people don't want to use it, then I need to change my ideas. And we've been really fortunate that all the core team of Enso is still here. We went through the trenches of 3.5 years, two pivots, to now see the fruition of the eating of sand, as people say.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's a great story. And I guess to speak to what you guys are doing now, right, with the infrastructure you guys have built out, you mentioned that one of the core problems was like, hey, like these audit costs are insane. That problem definitely has not gone away. I work for a DeFi protocol as well, and the audit costs are still insane. So I can clarify that and verify that. But so like, how have you guys then like solved that problem still with your infrastructure? Because like you mentioned you had 50 integrations at the beginning. You have way more now. You're just going to add more and more and more. How are you guys mitigated the need to like audit so much or so frequently when it comes to adding on new integrations or new protocols? Like talk about that a little bit.
No, it's a great question. I mean, maybe I can take a step back of like why a developer would use Enso and kind of the benefits of it, right? So you can kind of see from the story of us having to pivot 2 times. Like we wanted to build a customer facing product, but what inherently happened was we turned into a company that was a developer shop. We were a full dev shop building integrations, right? And by doing those integrations, you had to audit them, right? That was kind of the old way of doing it. Now you can just plug and play with Enso for like over 200 plus protocols. And you can say, hey, I want to build this app over the weekend that does these type of on-chain functionality. And you can really build it over a weekend. We had a customer build So Web 2, there's a tool called Zapier where you can automate different workflows. He's built this for crypto, like automating different transactions, different scenarios, off-chain data, on-chain data to then execute on-chain. He built all his integrations, him and his team, took him 7 months. Rebuilt it using Enso in a day and a half. 7 months to a day and a half, right? And then all these audit costs of kind of how do we make sure that everything we add is safe and secure, right? So we built a contract that is, you can envision as a universal adapter. So one contract interact with all other contracts that live on chain, whether that contract is a DeFi protocol, a swapping product, NFT protocol, or a brand new primitive that we just don't know yet, is able to interact with all of them, right? Able to interact and then also combine. So you can say, hey, I want to buy this token. I want to then lever up on Abbey. Then I want to use the receipt token from Abbey to then buy this NFT, all within one transaction, right? So that main contract itself has got, I believe, 7 audits from Chain Security, ABDK, and Mixed Bytes. We did have to pay audit costs again to make sure this was secure. But the main difference here really is before the methodology was to create one contract and then individual adapter contracts and then interact with the on-chain smart contracts, right? So we've just removed that whole middle layer that reduces all of this overhead. Now, once we add an integration, we have what we call a standards library. You can envision this as a big collected and organized library, like a literal physical library. You go in and you see, here, I want to see sci-fi, see all the sci-fi books ordered in alphabetical order. We've done the same for integrations. We have a TypeScript library that allows us to say, hey, for this action, which is lend, I want to add the protocol Abbey. So you'll add a function signature, you'll add what parameters are required, all off-chain. And then once the integration has been added, to be able to go into the library, it gets simulated. So by simulation, we built our own simulation tool, and you'll take a copy of mainnet, i.e. the whole information from mainnet, you create your own blockchain, then create call data and then put it on to make sure that it works properly. So that's kind of the workaround that we've done to kind of avoid all of this. And the benefits of the developers really is you get access to over 200 plus protocols in your product from the first day.
Yeah, it's interesting and it makes sense. So it makes sense how you guys kind of solved for that I guess continuous audit cost. Obviously you paid a lot up front, but now most of that's behind you, right? And you can just focus on adding new adapters. I guess from a practicality standpoint, when it comes to how you guys actually facilitate the bridging, right? The bridging is usually like where my mind goes first, is because so if I'm doing all this cross-chain functionality, has Enso built its own bridging, cross-chain, messaging layer, or are you guys outsourcing that to something like Layer 0, or you're relying on Axelar or some of these other omni-chain type protocols?
So you can envision Enso is this hub that knows all the information on each blockchain and kind of collects it and puts it in one place, right? So right now we're only same chain. So if somebody wants to interact with these 200 plus protocols on Ethereum, they can use Enso for this. What people are building on top of Enso is kind of what you're talking about. Li-Fi uses Enso. So Li-Fi aggregates other bridges. Then they use Enso to then find what's the best way to then execute on that chain, right? So other people are building these tools on top of Enso, which is really, really valuable in the way that Enso is an engine. Some of the use cases building on top of us, truthfully, like Boyco, I could have never imagined. Two-sided marketplace with protocols coming along, users coming along and having an agreement of how much yields and so forth. And that's all powered by Enso. And we have AI toolkits. We have top DeFi tooling. We have intent networks. We have cross-chain aggregators. We have rebalancing tools, asset managers. We have NFT protocols. The list just goes on. So Enso is kind of this engine of how to interact on chain, and then what people are building on top is, very, very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the first time I've heard. I know obviously Boyco has been wildly successful with what they've done with Berachain. But even I know Athena, right? Like when Athena went to, I think, Mantle, they leaned into like a similar model, not through I don't think it was through Enso, or maybe it was, but I know they were using Infinite Labs for that integration. But it was kind of the same concept, right? Like they provided tooling to kind of go cross chain and do what they needed to do on Mantle very quickly. So that's how they were able to expand so quickly and capture market share, right? And I think that's the main appeal, for something like this, right? Is like be able to move quickly on the technical side, so that way we can focus more on like the business case for what we're trying to do here. So let's talk about the Boyco integration a little bit, right? Obviously, I think that's probably present on everybody's minds today. Right now, as we're recording this, we're one day away from Barachain launching. Maybe talk about that a little bit. Like how long did it take for yourselves, the Boyco team, the Barachain team, to kind of like ideate on what that use case was going to look like? Did you guys start building this a year ago? How long did it take? Take us through that process a little bit and give us a little bit of a sneak peek behind the veil there.
The MVP in all of this is Jack, Captain Jack Sparrow. Barrow, I think his nickname is. He's a DeFi lead. Yeah, he's the DeFi lead at Bearchain. So I think it was actually his idea to work this with Boyco. Funnily enough, we had so Enso uses a contract called Wayroll, right? Wayroll was invented by Dina Ingerman and Nick Johnson and a few others. It was just a POC smart contract put on GitHub, right? It was left there, didn't work. Enso picked this up about a year and a half ago, paid for audits, kind of took charge of this people. Ultimately, what happened with that is we had large teams, including Uniswap, actually. Uniswap forked those contracts, used them for Universal Router without giving any credit. So we said, you know what, we're a small team, we don't have product market fit. We are going to fork this and call it Enso. We're not going to have larger players that have hundreds of millions of dollars, quite frankly, just not give any credit, right? And this happened multiple times. I'm just saying the largest names that's done this. So to give that's some of the context, because Boyco found this contract. We're like, oh, we'll use it. And then I saw similar naming, such as like actions and so forth. I reached out to the team and I was like, guys, why don't we just work on this together? And the Boyco team are incredible. We had a call, I think it was the next day, we hopped on a call. Okay, here's what is Boyco, what is Enso, how can we support? And it turns out they wanted to integrate over 84 different shortcuts, right? And none of the integrations had been built at that point. So we said, all right, pedal to the metal, let's do it, right? And this was about a month and a half ago. So all this was built under the hood of how to execute within 84 integrations in a month and a half by the Enso team. The big feat of this, I would say, is the coordination effort. There's 84 different scenarios, 11 different teams for execution. We've got pre-deposits, over 10, 15 as well. And we've been able to bundle all of this and do this within Enso shortcuts, right, across all this brand new blockchain, this whole new framework. And this week, it's $3.1 billion and fully reliant upon Enso shortcuts. And I think the largest transaction, again, this will probably go after, all this information public, is $300 million in one transaction. Enso's being trusted with 300 mil in one transaction. Things can go wrong, really wrong for that amount of size. And it went flawlessly, truthfully, it went absolutely flawlessly. And I think this is a really true testament of what Enso can bring to developers, and even for retail to understand what Enso does, is that it allows people to build completely new primitives that have never been thought before, fully reliant upon Enso. This whole trend of this Boyco stuff wasn't possible until Enso. Then you've got this DeFi was not possible. You have so many more that are being built that fundamentally just the tooling wasn't there. Everyone focuses on, I want to build this layer one and I'll go to a roll up as a service and I'll click and drop and I'll launch a token on top, right? But everyone seems to forget you're going to have people launching applications on there. Then you're going to need to have developers that know how to integrate. And Enso's kind of this one tool that you can integrate to get access to all of them. But, the Boyco experience has been a true testament, I think, of all the teams involved, Barachain, Boyco, and Enso. It's really a super house.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure a lot of sleepless nights for you. So I'm surprised you're even sitting here with me today. So thank you for your time. but
It's been some days it's been up till 6, 7 a.m. We're actually creating a leaderboard in Enso right now of what's it
yeah.
called? Who the top three in Enso's least slept leaderboard. Which most
Yeah, I'm
most
sure it'll be hard to beat you when it comes to that. But yeah, no, it's super interesting. When I saw the Royco stuff go live, I've been talking to the Royco guys actually myself for a month or two, and I had no idea they were building what they were building, right? And until the announcement came out, and I was like, oh man, you guys have really been cooking for a while, right? Um, but so okay, so let's frame it this way, right? So you guys have obviously billions of dollars, right, have been transacted on or kind of built on Enso's rails. Let's talk about the business model for Enso. Where do you guys kind of take your fees? Where do you make this like a sustainable business for the team? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think what's good to have here to mention is kind of this network effect. So for Enso to really shine, is that Enso needs to have all this information of how to interact on chain in one hub. Right. Right now, the single point of failure, if you want to call it that, or the bottleneck for this network effect is the Enso team needs to add it. Sure, we can go super fast and we can spend, less time sleeping. But the reality is we need to open the system up for anybody to contribute, right? So let's say there's a new protocol that somebody wants to use, then somebody comes along and adds it. So similar to how somebody creates a subgraph on the graph, right? They're doing for fetching data, ours is for fetching and also executing data. So kind of that's gonna trail into the next point where people then requesting information of how to execute on chain. If it's large brands, large providers, and they're doing large volume, if they're charging their user fees, then we'll take a percentage of that fee. Some people that have custody, maybe they've got 2 million to 20 million daily active users, they're comfortable in charging 1% to these users. And then we can get a kickback of this, right? So that's one side. The other side is we run kind of our own solvers, we run our own other tooling on top of this that can also generate revenue as well. And then the third method is also a base subscription fee. So for people wanting to get dedicated instances of Enso to make sure they're getting lightning speed responses, then they'll pay a general monthly fee for this.
Gotcha. No, it makes sense to me. So so we talked about what's going on with Royco and Berachain. That's kind of like what's happening now, but you kind of couldn't have gotten to that moment, I don't think, without kind of like proving the concept first. So maybe take us back a little bit to the origin story of like, okay, so you just figured out this problem. You said you talked to like 5 or 6 other teams that were having the same problem. What would you point to as like maybe like that was the use case or that was the breakthrough like integration partner that kind of like opened the floodgates for you guys and gave you that social proof, gave you that legitimacy, to kind of further expand your network? Like maybe talk about that a little bit. Cow swap. No, love those guys.
They have been incredible. Really, really good team. I mean, they are the OGs of Intent, right? They're the real pushers of this whole ecosystem. So we were fortunate to be able to solve there because they wanted to have use cases of DAOs entering large DeFi positions with MEV protection. I think, if I remember correctly, it was like Rocket Pool or Abbey was doing like 60 million, and we were providing underneath that execution for how to interact with that DeFi protocol. So in the first couple of weeks, we'd done tens, of millions of dollars of transactions, which amounted multiples of what we'd spent the last 2.5 years trying to do. And so we think, wow, that was the light bulb moment. I still remember I was in Montenegro, actually, just focused on Enso, just in a random hut in nature, and just counting manually. I was counting manually the dollar values and going, oh wow, we need to double down on this. And we kept the front end live. It's still one of the best user experiences for how to interact with DeFi, and we kept it there. We just left it there for 6 months. In the background, churning, get more people to use it, so more use cases, see what people actually needed. And at that point, we didn't have anyone in BD or marketing or DevRel inside of Enso. I was doing that myself to use these BD calls as customer research, really speaking to people, what do you actually need? Okay, can we solve this and so forth? And we just left the front end there for like 6 months. And we're like, all right, people are doing random things for airdrops, but in the background, we're churning hundreds of millions of dollars. We clearly know what add value. So then we just, after 6-7 months, just stopped doing on the front end.
Gotcha. No, yeah, it's really, really interesting. Yeah, I think everybody has that aha moment, right? Or like that's the kind of the turning of the tide, right? Yeah, CowSwap. Of course, I know CowSwap. I mean, love CowSwap. Let's talk about the solver part of your business a little bit, because I've been really interested actually in this kind of this future I think we're all headed in. I'm of the opinion that intents will kind of like eat the world, because I think that's one of the most efficient ways to like transact, whether it's a perp dex or an order book model, like whatever kind of model there is, right? This intent based future I think is upon us, especially when it comes to like the omni-chain future. Do you think that solver side of your business has a lot of room to grow? Talked to a lot of cross chain teams that are building like these networks that are going to enable solvers to kind of make more money, in DeFi and kind of open things up. Like, what do you think about that side of the business?
I mean, we were one of the top solvers in CowSwap, I think, in certain weeks. We were number one, right? So we know that space really, really well. Intents are purely, for those who don't know, an intent is I have orange juice and I want a Pepsi Max. Okay? That's it. I have A and I want B. And in this case, A could be a token, I want another token, or I want a DeFi position, or I want an NFT, or I want any on-chain state, right? The word intent is too complex. It's unnecessary, it's alienating, and in reality, it's just a job bulletin board. Like, you're posting millions of jobs for people to do, when in reality, there's only 10 workers. And what these intent networks do is they say, solvers will figure it out. Who are the solvers? There's only 10 people in the whole space that do this, right? We're one of them. And it's like, oh, so the problem statement is let's make sure that people can express their intents for everything on chain. Okay, cool. Then the question will be, who's going to do it? Solvers. Okay, who are the solvers? Oh, there's 10. And then if you go layers and layers and layers, you start to realize that the problem is being shifted. It's ultimately seeing these solvers are God mode and they're going to figure out the universal purpose, which is not true. And no, if you look at solvers, what they're really doing right now is they're only doing token swaps. We were the first and we're the only people doing stuff that's not related to token swaps. So for this intent-centric future to become a reality, Enso shortcuts are at the forefront of actually making it real. In the Enso engine, you can envision as this collaborative effort or this master solver, where if I want to know how to interact with Avi, somebody else can add that, and then everyone else can use it, right? Or if I want to interact with this NFT protocol, it's added there. It's like the shared map, the shared information, and this can all be used for generating shortcuts, and then these intent protocols can use Enso. So I do believe that, there's intent centricity is real, right? But the real juice of this whole ecosystem, quite frankly, is Enso shortcuts. And we are powering the largest protocols to be able to interact on chain as of today. And intents, to me, truthfully, now that we spent a lot of time in it, it just feels like a big narrative, with not much tangibility because stuff's just shifted to other people like us. And then we're building it, right? So, how do, again, to break this down, so solvers, whatever it is doing today is saying, hey, this is a solver, right? Let's just say this Pepsi can solver. You're saying a solver will source every single ingredient. They will source the paint. They will source the can. They will source the distribution channels. They will source everything. That's what people are saying what a solver does today. What Enso basically says is we strip individual parts of this and say, hey, everyone has their own little specialized role within the system, so we can all make this can together. yeah, that's kind of my view of intents and so forth.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, it's one of the things that I've thought of that I know I think I've heard other founders even building like the in the intent space talk about, right, is that there's not a whole lot of solvers out there. There's really not. I think you guys have heard Wintermute is another name. Like they're usually these market makers, right, that have like this capability. Um, but yeah, I think in order to get there, like there's got to be simplicity to the solver side as well, right? Which is kind of what you were alluding to, is kind of simplifying that a little bit more, right? So it'd be interesting to see as things play out here, in the next 5 to 10 years, how that actually, builds up, over time. So good. All right. So we talked about DeFi, we talked about what you guys are building, on the solver side a little bit. I know you guys have also already been thinking about and already been building in like the AI space, trying to make it easier for like these AI agents to, take advantage of your shortcuts. A big integration, I think, with I think it was, what's it called? Hey Anon, Danielle Siesta's project in AI. Let's talk about that a little bit. Like, what kind of tweaks to your system did you guys have to make, if any, to kind of cater to these AI agents and kind of the new coming wave of AI and crypto?
We didn't need to make any changes because what we've done is we've like standardized on-chain actions. So like Avi.lend, Amorpho.lend, Euler.lend, or NFT.buy, or blah, 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 right? So one thing that people seem to forget with these AI agents is, they will maybe eventually be able to generate all the information needed of how to execute complex transactions themselves on chain, right? By complex, I mean literally complex, not just swapping on Uniswap. So you still need this layer, this translation layer from the information they're getting off chain for making decisions of what they want to do to then know how to do that on chain, right? And that's where Enso fits in this middle part. We've got Hey Anon, you've got there's one that went live. One sec, we just tweeted this yesterday actually. Lumley went live, then Brian knows AI. Wayfinder is gonna go live soon as well. There's I think about 10, 15 agent teams, Crestel, Intent Kits, all using Enso for knowing how to execute on chain. So these AI agents are, yeah, it's a really powerful use case. I think I'd done a presentation in Istanbul about a year and a half ago talking about intents and shortcuts, and saying that it would be fun if there was an autonomous agent acting upon your behalf, and and using intents and Enso shortcuts for this. And this future has become now a reality. So people like Hey Anon, they want to have this DeFi doing DeFi actions. They were building these integrations themselves, right? You integrate Enso, you get 200 plus actions from day one. So the question will be, which is an interesting thought experiment, is all these AI agents are going to get access to all the on-chain protocols using Enso, right? I think even Virtual is going live soon, and yeah, everyone's integrating Enso for this. The question is, they're all going to have all the same on-chain actions. What's the differentiation going to be at that stage, right? Because some of the differentiation there is, yeah, I can interact with that protocol or that protocol or that, but once they all have the same, is it the off-chain information part? Is it the community part then that's actually going to be the most interesting? Are people going to wrap up vaults around agents so you can actually tokenize these agents and then get a revenue share of them? Once these agents are able to do everything on chain, that's not the product differentiation, which is so interesting because that's kind of the point of Enso, which is focus on your product. But now we're at this early stage of these agents that's one of the differentiations, what they can do. But once they can all do the same stuff, what's the next thing that's different?
Alchemix Finance empowers you to spend and save at the same time with a self-repaying, interest-free, non-liquidatable loan. Deposit your assets and access your future yield today. Available on Mainnet, Arbitrum, and Optimism. Head to alchemix.fi to get started. Right. Yeah, no, agreed. I guess I kind of view Enso in that light as like, it's almost like the training ground for these AI agents, right? Like where they can come and, kind of integrate that into their machine learning, and kind of pick up the tools that they need, to truly transact on chain, which is a really cool use case to think about, right? If you think about like, how do you serve the AI agent? Well, you got to teach them how to transact on chain. That's probably the primary thing, right?
I'm also fetching data, right? So, we've spoken a lot about Enso for this kind of executional hub, being able to execute many different things on chain, integrate one source, many protocols, many different chains under one framework. So you don't need to leverage Solidity or Rust or Move and so forth. You can just basically use Enso for this and TypeScript and Python. But the other part is the data, right? So we also offer a service where we give you all the on-chain data related to the protocol that you want to interact with. So DeFi protocol could be user balances, TVL, logos, protocol names, APY and such. And, these sound small, but if you're interacting with over 200 plus protocols, you need that information to train the AI model to know what to then do thereafter. So there's even a step before the execution, right? And we know teams using this for that.
Really good stuff. Really good stuff. So it's almost like you've captured the now, which is kind of like DeFi, and then, in the short term, hopefully, like this omni-chain future of DeFi. And then, the future of kind of like the AI agent, centric future that everybody seems to think is around the corner. So I think Enso is really, really well positioned, right? When it comes to that, obviously you agree. So what's next for the protocol, right? Like I don't think you guys have a token yet. Are you guys planning on, launching a token? Like what's that utility look like if you've thought through that, for a token, and what's the function of it, for Enso?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think I think the space loves decentralization, but I think a lot of people forget that decentralization with no distribution and no people using it doesn't fucking matter. You've wasted years of your time. It doesn't matter. So we wanted to test our thesis of, do we add value? Can people ship products really, really quickly in a centralized form, which is Enso API, right? Which we've done. So now the network effect of Enso is opening this up, right? We've already had so many requests come in and say, want this protocol, want that protocol. And the question we had to ask ourselves as a company was, do we want to hire 100 developers or 500 developers to build these abstractions for how to execute on all these smart contracts and all these blockchains? Do we see there being 100 million plus smart contracts that live on these chains in the future? How many people are we going to need to hire for this? Or can we open this up? Can we distribute and decentralize part of the network that people can then add how to interact with protocols? That was kind of the first part of why we actually needed real decentralization and not just for a token. And then the second part was, okay, so now that we have this world map, you can envision it, so the state machine is like a world map that knows all the train routes, the bus routes, the plane routes between every single city and every single country in one place. Now we need to build full algorithms for routing this, connecting all these dots together, which we've done. We have a PhD mathematician from ETH Zurich, which is, up there with the best universities in the world. But again, are we going to need to hire 100 of those? Because there's so many different scenarios that are there, and there's going to be there. So why don't we open that up? Could we find people that are specialized in purely algorithms, mathematicians? They don't need to care where the data is being fetched from, but now they can just focus on finding the best combinations of all these different actions. And then the third part, which I think is one of the most important parts you've kind of brought up early in the discussion on this podcast, was how do we ensure that this is not safe? And right now we simulate ourselves. Okay, so that's a risk, right? Maybe our backend gets hijacked, or there's some spanner attacks to change that and so forth. And there's large funds flowing through us, which happened this week, $3.1 billion. That's a big single point of failure risk here. So how do we distribute this? How do we have the simulation infrastructure ran by many different people? We call these validators. These people are simulating the outputs from the graphers, which are the mathematicians, and the graphers are using the previous people, which are called the action providers of how to interact with the protocol. And then all these individuals are kind of saying which is the best one, which is not, and kind of the outcomes and so forth, and if it will execute and whatnot. All of this comes together into the Enso network. The Enso network is a Cosmos-based chain, but it's not a chain that you're expected to. It's not like a bear chain where you're going to deploy your app there, right? We're using Cosmos in a way as a coordination layer of information between different parties to build information to then give it back to the requester, which is kind of our current customers and all the future customers. So this is where the Enso token is going to be used. But I wanted to highlight that it's really a need for decentralization. It is not purely just for a token launch. You know, this we have seen the network effect that Enso's already been able to get. And if we're able to have Enso as the go-to tool, like a vision for me pretty much is if I was a developer 8, 9 years ago and I search Google and I go, build blockchain app, I want them to use Enso. I want all these new developers to go and use Enso. I want it to be up there with Web3.js, with Ethers.js. I want this to be a standard tool that you always use if you're an expert, advanced, medium, whatever it may be. And to be able to do that, we need to open it up so we have all the information in one place. Yeah, that's kind of where the Enso token comes into play. And we have, got really good investors in the round as well. What we had previous rounds, we had Polychain Capital, Multicoin Capital, Cider Fund, Dialectic, over 70 plus angel investors from founders of Pudgy, Layer Zero, Socket, and Ep.5, many different people, right? Flashbots, Titan, and whatnot. So, yeah, that's kind of where the Enso token will come into play.
Awesome. I mean, I think my favorite thing that I heard you just say right there is like the whole, don't decentralize just to decentralize. I've said that many times. It's I fucking despise when people talk about decentralization for everything. Like that's the answer for everything. You have to do it when it makes sense to do it, and you have to do it in a part of your business that makes sense to do it. So anyway, I digress. It's a good place for us to wrap up, Connor. It's been a great discussion. Really, really appreciate your time. Anybody that's listening to this, obviously check out our show notes. We'll have links over to the socials for Enso, and you can kind of keep an eye on what they're building and see how you might be able to get involved with the Enso protocol down the line here. But really, really appreciate it, Connor. Have a good day, and we'll talk to you soon.